I went to take some nighttime photos of a local historic building which was condemned, but had been used to house scientists in the 1940s. I went there with 3 of my friends around midnight. It was a run-down, 2-story U-shaped building with a 3rd floor that only covered small parts of the building. It also had a run-down pool that had a busted-up fence still around it. 2 of my friends went around the right side of the building, and I went around to the left with my other friend. As we came around the very back side of the building, we noticed that there was a window that did not have its curtains closed. We looked in, and on the left side of the room was a desk covered in massive amounts of dust, with an exception of a singular handprint on the desk. The chair to the desk was also half cocked to the side, as though somebody had been recently sitting there. On the right side of the room was a bed that was made up with an ugly green comforter, neatly tucked down with 2 white pillows. The bed was completely tucked and neat, and it was like a fake bed in a model Barbie house. To the back left was a door which was boarded up from the outside rather extensively. We thought it was weird, but figured that maybe somebody had snuck inside. We tried to take pictures, but both of our cameras were dead. We started heading back around to the front of the building, expecting to get our phones out of the car. We get back from the front side of the building and meet my 2 other friends there. Wondering why we were there, we explained what happened and that our cameras were dead. As we were explaining it though, we heard glass shatter towards the side of the building where the room was. We looked up and there was a broken window up on the 3rd floor's attic room. We thought there might be a homeless person in there, and we made our way back to the front of the building, and as we come around the corner, there was a police officer waiting there. Apparently there's an agreement with the people who live up the hill from this building that they would watch over it and call the police in case anything suspicious happened. Explaining that I was just there to take photos, the officer seemed irritated to have to respond to the call. He didn't seem comfortable being there, as though he may have already had some run-ins with the place. I apologized to the officer because I didn't know I wasn't allowed to take pictures of the local landmark. Then I explained that he might want to check for homeless people or drug users inside. And when he asked why, I explained the glass breaking. He asked us to show him where it was, and we took him over to the side of the building. When we were walking, not only was the glass no longer broken, the curtain was now closed, and it smelled like rotten eggs really bad. To this day, I don't know what the hell that was. I never believed in ghosts before, and I'm not really a spiritual person or anything, but I can't explain it. Before we go on to the next story, if you could please leave a like and subscribe, it means a lot and helps the channel grow. Thank you. When I was 11, we moved into a haunted house. From the beginning, we knew something was off. The house was big, probably built in the 40s, and had hardwood floors. There were axe marks in the wood floors of the living room. I would have nightmares, almost nightly, of a man standing outside my window. His face was disfigured by burns. Although he never tried to get in my dreams, it was enough to terrify 11-year-old me. Our family would be sitting in the living room, and we would hear someone walking in the hallway. You could track their progress from one end of the hallway to the other, eventually going into the den and disappearing. We would hear someone in the kitchen, moving pots and pans around or whispering. I had shoes with hard soles, they were loafer style, and my family would constantly yell at me for walking in the hallway with those loud-soled shoes, but it wasn't me. They'd come out and I would be sitting on the couch or sleeping. My brother was a baby, and we had one of those wind-up style baby swings for him. And once he fell asleep in the swing, you never wanted to rewind it because it would make such a god-awful noise. But you could sit in the living room with my brother asleep and the swing would be stopped, and you would just start watching it swing on its own. And there were always more instances. Rocking chairs that rocked by themselves, the hot water in the shower would turn on by itself. After I grew up, my kids and I stayed there briefly with my parents, and my children would have the same nightmares about the burnt person outside the window. About 6 years ago, a gentleman stopped by the house and had a long conversation with my stepmother. He told her that he grew up in the house in the 60s, and that his dad had mental issues and alcoholism. At the end of it, he tried to set his wife and kids on fire, but ended up burning himself in the process. This encounter happened to me in 2010, when I lived in Chicago. I went with my best bud to catch a science fiction movie at AMC River East, my favorite theater in town. We sat in the balcony in the cavernous theater number 2. No one was on the balcony with us. I gave my bud some money to get popcorn and soda. As I sat there watching those annoying pre-movie commercials, I heard the chair behind me squeak. It sounded like someone sat down right behind me, but you'd have to enter from the side of me, so pretty much I'd be able to see you walk in. I didn't think about it too much until I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked at it like, why is this person touching me? I saw red nails and a big wedding ring and a pearl bracelet. I heard a woman's voice say, "Pick up the phone when it rings. It's your mother. Do as she asks." I didn't really recognize the voice because it was more of a whisper. Then I felt a gentle stroking of my hair, and I could smell a floral perfume. At that point, my buddy had returned. He looked at me and asked who that lady was behind me, but he couldn't describe her well because of the shadows. The theater lights started to dim and the trailer started. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was my mother. My grandmother had just died unexpectedly, and I needed to go home and help her with funeral arrangements. She thought I was the only one who'd be able to keep it together and organize it. At the funeral, my grandmother's hands were crossed like you'd expect. She had shiny red nails, her wedding ring, and a pearl bracelet. I could smell her rose perfume as well. It was the last thing my grandfather bought her before he passed too. I used to work at one of the most haunted places in Ontario, Fort George National Historic Site. I was never really a believer because plenty of times I've been working there at night and nothing odd ever happened. My last season working there, I stayed on until the winter. I'm sitting in the blockhouse, Soldiers Barracks, 15 minutes into opening. I'm by myself and it's a slow, rainy October day, about midweek. Above me, I heard footsteps loud and prominent. Nothing out of the ordinary. We have stuff upstairs for occasional field trip programs. It is off limits, but usually often enough, curious people take a look. So I go to the base of the steps to shoo off the visitors, and it's pitch dark up there. I called up. "Sir, ma'am, that area is off limits right now. If you come down here, I'd love to give a tour of the barracks for you." I get no answer. A bit more shaky, I called back again, but still no answer. I take a few steps up the stairway, just enough to see up there, and I saw nothing. No light, no people, nothing, and I was shook. I leave the blockhouse and sit outside for the next hour. Nobody comes out, and there are only 2 doors to the building, so I would have seen someone leave. I asked my coworkers if anyone was playing a joke on me. They said no, and they were all older people, so why would they anyway? I also learned that there was no visitors in the fort yet. Turns out after asking around, I'm not the first one to experience this. There is a known ghost that does that on rare occasions. Nobody has seen them, but it has been reported before. I was a skeptic before this, but nothing logical would have made those footsteps.